You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Hey everyone, thanks again for hitting that play button. It's another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. This episode is brought to you by HorrorPack.com. HorrorPack.com is the monthly movie subscription service. Each month you'll get 4 mystery Blu-rays or DVDs depending on which subscription service you sign up for. That's HorrorPack.com. And for those of you who didn't see it on social media, I was a guest on Scott McMahon's Film Trooper podcast. I usually don't like doing other people's podcasts for a couple different reasons, but if you're interested, I will have a link in the show notes. Scott's an amazing guy, and Scott has a lot of great resources available for filmmakers on his website. That's filmtrooper.com, and again, I'll have the link in the show notes. And so on this week's episode of the Dave Bullis podcast, I have Jason Love. Jason is an animator, web designer, balloon twister, magician, writer, artist, and educator. And he's also self-published comics, produced short films, owned a screen printing business, and even performed on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. So here we go, episode 85 with guest Jason Love.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Jason, how's everything going?
That's going great. I'm excited to be on the show.
Oh, thank you. By the way, that's an awesome name to have.
Thanks.
It reminds me of Buddy Love from The Night Professor.
Oh, yeah. There's actually quite a few Jason Loves. That's the only downside to having that name, because somebody else got the URL before I did.
You know, I actually know a guy named Lance Love, and the first time I ever met him, I was like, that has to be a fake name. And he's like, no. He's like, I've had this name since birth.
Yeah. Every once in a while, people, they get excited about it. So, yeah, it's a cool name to have. I like it.
So, Jason, I wanted to ask you, you started in animation, and I wanted to ask you, what got you started to animating at a young age?
Sure. I started animating, let's see how, well, I'm trying to think of early, like I was really into flip books. So I guess flip books would have been like the earliest animation, but I didn't actually get into playing around with it till college. And it's hard to say. One of the influence would be is seeing Wallace and Gromit, which I watched quite a bit in high school, and realizing that my drawing skills didn't have to be, you'd see the Disney animation stuff and you see the drawing and you're just like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. And then when Wallace and Gromit came out, I thought, oh man, I don't think I can necessarily, especially the first one, I would say is the most influential, because it's like not perfect, but it's still a great story. And it made me realize, you don't have to be, animation isn't just drawing, it's all these other forms. And so in college I started off with the old VHS camcorder that was like a giant, now it's probably the size of a Blu-ray player. And the first one I ever did, it would just been time lapse of me drawing something. And so I would draw a little bit, I would hit the record button, turn the camera off, draw a little more, and then hit record, turn it off. And it was very unscientific in the sense of like how long each frame was. But that was the first. And then college computer lab, I was playing around and I realized they had Windows Movie Maker, and I didn't know anything really about it. And I don't even remember how I started playing with it. I think I just thought, hey, if I can do this on a VHS, I should be able to do this somehow with this program, even if it's that same logic of like cutting it so it's, basically a clip for a quarter of a second or whatever. And then I realized with that program, I think at that time you could get it down to 0.8 seconds, maybe it was 0.3. Anyways, you could get it down to almost what they would call in animation thirds, which is like normally it's 24 frames a second, but this would be 8 frames. Yeah, 8 frames per second. And so, which is good enough to create animation. And in fact, a lot of Wallace and Gromit, depending on what you're doing, I mean, some of that is shot at 8 frames a second, depending on how much detail and whatnot you want in the movement. So, and then from there, I just kept playing around with it and, went to film school for a little while. And I ended up dropping out because they were still using traditional film. And I was just, I really hated traditional film and part of it was because, it was a commute, I went to school specifically to use their equipment, and they had old Bolex cameras, 8mm, I believe. I'd have to look. I can't remember if it's 8 or 16, but I believe maybe it's 16. Anyways, so shooting on actual film, but these cameras, are getting beat up by other students. So I think I only had maybe a few seconds that ever got out without being washed out by light, or because the cameras leaked light or things like that. So then I ended up just dropping out, and instead of learning, I started teaching animation to at local libraries and things like that. So I guess it's a long answer to my road in animation.
No, but you're absolutely right. I've seen, universities, and I mean, I work at university too during the day, and I see, the equipment does just take a beating. And, I'm in Philadelphia. We have about 3 or 4 of big universities, and out of those, there's film majors. And it's interesting to see, about, different gear, and, who has a certain amount of gear, who has, this gear, who has to go to rental houses. But that's the common thing, though, is gear takes a freaking beating sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, another thing I always point out is just the film itself. To buy a 2 minutes, I believe it was about 2 minutes. It was 200 feet. So whatever that, I'd have to do the math on that. 200 feet of film was like $20 or something. And so you could get a few minutes out of that. And when I was looking at digital, and digital was popping up at the time, it was just the school I was at, which was UW Milwaukee. They were a little bit slow on jumping on that bandwagon. And I think they were really holding on to film. I'm not sure what their logic was. Maybe they just didn't want to buy the new equipment, or maybe the new students to have it. It was just so expensive. And it's like, I can shoot as much as I want on digital, and I might want to get more storage or buy a better camera, but that's never the issue of paying per second or per foot of film isn't an issue with digital. So,
I was thinking about buying a Super 8 camera, and there's a ton of them on sale on eBay. Well, they're going for dirt cheap. What's expensive is the Super 8 film that you have to put in the camera, and it's going for like a tin of it is like $50, and this one guy had a lot for like $500. And you get a couple of them, and I'm saying to myself, my Android has a Super 8 app now that I started playing around with, and it's getting pretty close. Right.
Yeah. It depends too on. It's funny. I can't remember the name of the guy, but the guy who did Grindhouse with Tarantino,
Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, I heard an interview with him, and he was saying how Tarantino was like, "I'm going to use film," and then Rodriguez used digital, and it was easier for Rodriguez to get the film look than it was for Tarantino, because like Tarantino was looking for that old film look, and if you have new film, it takes a lot of work to really get it to that level, like it's literally being used. And so you can almost make it easy. It's almost easier to do in digital than, depending on what kind of look you want, just because of all those filters, and you can be very deliberate on the effects you want. So
so I remember reading an interview with Tarantino, and he had to go through and put all those scratches in himself because he wanted it to look like a grindhouse, like a weathered film look, that like it was just been beaten up as it's been going to theater to theater to theater. And of course there's the missing frames and all those touches, but that's what he had to do. He had to go through and put in all these scratches and all this other stuff and some noise and stuff just to give it that aesthetic.
Right.
Then you started teaching animation at libraries. So, how did you approach that? Did you, go there and actually work with the librarians and say, hey, I want to start an animation class?
Sort of. I've been doing magic for I had started doing magic before I started teaching at the libraries, and I right after college I became a full-time magician, and animation was a hobby, and it's still questionable. I guess I make money from animation, but I it's not like my full-time income. But I wouldn't even say it's an established relationship. I basically just emailed a bunch. I got a list off of the internet of all the libraries and just said, hey, I'm doing this animation workshop. It teaches kids how to do animation at home. At the time, I was calling it Cheap Animator, which I don't call it that anymore. I don't think they like that name. But and then the librarians, they need to fill up their summers. Summer's usually a busy time if I want to do animation workshops, or like I have one coming up that's in December because it's like Christmas break, but most of them are summertime. And so, they just be like, yeah, bring me in. And I do it mostly in Wisconsin. I can't think of too many that I've done. I've done magic shows all over, but I haven't quite, I haven't promoted as much out of Wisconsin. But I mean, there's so many libraries that I recommend that to most artists to contact. Libraries are a good place to contact if you're looking to make a few extra bucks teaching any kind of art form. And, it helps if it's something that kids can do. Although I have done older, mine are always teens, and I've done some adult stuff, but most of the libraries are looking for, mostly kid oriented. But I've also done like art museums. I've done a few of those, and those are more looking for adult stuff. So yeah, the libraries was just an easy choice because I had a little bit of a relationship with them and had all their contact info.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. He actually pitched a screenwriting course to a local library, to his local library, and they ended up saying, we'll get back to you. And then they ended up actually getting back to him. He thought they were blowing him off, but they came back and said, yeah, would you mind teaching a screenwriting? It started off as just a one-off like seminar for like an hour or two, and then it became started becoming more and more, and I mean, that worked out pretty well because he pitched it as, hey, look, it's writing and we're in a library, so it does tie in together. And they gave him a little room off to the side, and it worked out pretty well. But so that's a pretty good tip though, is to libraries can if you have a library in your area, that can be worked out pretty well if you pitch them right and pitch them the right project at the right time.
Yeah, I think a big part is just making it sound like like you have, if it's your first one, making it sound like you actually have it planned out. When I sent out my stuff, I said specifically what they'd learn, and I mean even now I switch it up depending on mostly on the students, just because I have enough experience that, but as long as they have the feeling that you have a outline of what you're going to do, and then you send it to them and say, this is the outline. Right now, what I tend to do I haven't really promoted it much lately, but I might start again for the summer, is I'll say, first I'll ask their interest, and then they'll usually say they want more info. And that's when you give them the big spiel. I feel like sending out like a big spiel can be overwhelming to librarians. So it's easier to say, hey, is this something you're interested in? I'll send you more information. They'll email me back, and then I'll say, okay, here's the outline. Here's I don't like to have a class more than 25 students. Here's the requirements, blah, blah, blah. And then they see that I have these requirements, and it makes them realize, oh, this guy's done this before. He knows what he's doing. So it's just a trick for someone, even if it's the first time, just have that thought up front so that when they email you back, it sounds like you know what you're doing because you have your requirements, and you're like, I usually like to have a projector. So I say that, it's not required, but it's nice, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it just makes it look a little more professional.
That's very cool, and that is a really excellent tip about pitching too, because I think that works in other areas as well. Because when I've gone to pitch events, and I've seen also and going into discussions about the elevator pitches, I've always been told, if you do have something to show, it's actually a little better than if you just actually talk to them. And you know what I mean? Like if you can actually show them, like even a one sheet. Right.
And I do that with the libraries now, as I can show them past student work and things like that. So, but yeah, it's definitely good to have. If you have something, it's always better because it's physical confirmation.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely. As you taught these animation courses, when did you get in to start making short films?
I would just say kind of along the way. I mean, the first video I did was in college, and I had the mindset of I wanted to become a professional magician. And the first video I ever made was basically a weird animated promo video for my magic show, just because I thought it'd be weird, and most magicians don't. I don't know, for some reason I loved animation anyway, so it was kind of like, well, I'll have this unusual thing, and then I could play it before shows. And I did a little bit. I used to work with another entertainer at the time, and so in that whole video, actually, funny enough, is I used Photoshop, but I mean, Photoshop now has an animation feature somehow. I haven't done it in a while, but I know you can do animation with Photoshop. But I had the layers, and I would literally save a photo, change my arm, save the photo. So that was, I guess, the start. I already forgot the question.
When did you get into short films?
Oh yeah, okay. So I would say, I guess in theory, that would be the short film, and then I think the next short film would have been years later. and it was I wanted to learn Flash. So it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm going to literally teach myself Flash while making this short film. And that one was it's called Hillary's Adventures in Politics, and I was hoping to get it done like super fast because it was the time when Hillary was she was working for the primary, trying to get the primaries with Obama, which would have been, like 8 years ago. And I thought I would have it done for sure by the time anything happened, and it took me forever. So it was definitely a learning experience. It ended up being like, it was over 5 minutes. I can't remember the total. Yeah, it was. And ever since then, it's just been stuff like that where I get an idea and I'm kind of like, I'm going to make I'm going to give this a try. Or if I'm learning a new program. So like another one I did was I was working on my comic book and I wanted to make a motion comic. So I decided to kind of make a short film that was motion, it wasn't perfect animation. It was simplified animation. And yeah, just I get random thoughts, I guess. And then I ended up getting stuck into them as a long-term project. So
is there any place online where people can, check out some of your short films?
Yeah, I think most of those are, if you just go to YouTube and search Madman of Magic, I believe it's under that channel. I have like 3 or 4 different channels and I lose track of them. I think that one has those. Most of my other ones before film school are locked away somewhere, so you can't see those, but you can see the Hillary one for sure. And I think the first one I made is somewhere looming on YouTube, but I'd have to look that up. But the Hillary one's definitely on there. If you look up Hillary's Adventures in Politics, it should come up.
Cool, and I'll look for that and put that in the show notes for anyone who's interested. So you mentioned comics as well, and when did you start developing your own comics? And also I wanted to ask did you actually animate your own comics from the beginning, or like animate them yourself, or did you have sort of farm that out?
You mean for the motion comic?
Yeah.
No, I did it all myself. My wife does all the illustrations, so I did the animation, and those were. I did them relatively quick, but they were a bit tedious because I was using a mix between Flash and Premiere and on CS3, and so it worked, but I was having issues with Flash not being able to handle that much. They were drawn in Illustrator. I'd bring them over to Flash, and then Flash, and I think it was just my computer was having a hard time doing anything longer than 10 to 20 seconds. So then I would cut those out into shorter pieces and then put them together in Premiere, and then sometimes use some of the camera movements in Premiere. But yeah, the movements were more me, and actually the illustrations were, I'd say 90% my wife doing that. So
now when you did your comics, did you put them online or just to show, to sort of make a portfolio? Were you putting them online to hopes of getting other work, or sort of that was the goal of these, or would you have another goal in mind?
So the comic book, it's actually goes back to the animation. I ended up making, so the comic book's called Madman of Magic, and it was an idea that I came up with. So I used to perform as the Madman of Magic, and I thought, it'd be fun to make a comic book. And then I had come up with this idea, and I was actually going to coffee with some friends who were really big comic book nerds. Like I know a little bit, but these people, like they go nuts. So I brought in some of the concept drawings that I had and just asked them. I said, hey, this is the idea. I was kind of just as a fun project, I was coming up with these ideas. What do you think? And they thought it was a cool idea. So then my logic behind making the character a magician was, worst case scenario, if this book doesn't sell, I'll use it for my promotional material, kind of like that first animated project. So almost made it a fail safe for if it didn't do well. And so I ended up doing the motion comic just because I wanted to do a Kickstarter for it. And I knew I needed a video, and I liked animation, and I liked motion comics. I know some people hate motion comics, but I find them interesting, and some are better than others, like anything. And so yeah, I animated it after we were already working on as a comic book.
What software did you use to animate that?
A mix between the Flash, Premiere, and kind of making the cutouts in Illustrator, or the images in Illustrator that had the separate assets. So that was a cool part about using Illustrator. I hadn't quite thought of before. Was like if my wife drew a hand, I would tell her, "Hey, can you make sure that the fingers are in different layers? These pieces are different layers." And so it almost became a like cutout animation because I had all these. When I threw it into Flash could separate all those instead of having to literally cut them out in the program. So yeah, and then I used Premiere to kind of put all those pieces together and do a few of the effects were done in Premiere.
Yeah, you and I were talking before the show about about the Adobe Creative Suite and all the things you can actually do with that, and it's just absolutely amazing. I've gotten into comic books and stuff like that. Now I'm not an illustrator by any means. I just write the scripts and sort of pass them on to the illustrator who draws them up. But one thing I've learned also is about all the layers that go into them. And when the illustrator comes back to me and says, "Hey Dave, what do you think of this?" I can say, "Well, could you add this?" And she I can see her screen where she's adding these layers on, like adding a hat on or doing something different. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal, being able to add those layers in. And then if we want them gone, it's a click of a button and the layer's gone.
Yeah, for sure. It's I play around with this stuff, but my wife's really the Illustrator person. I'm more of a Photoshop guy. Like I like Photoshop, but in that you have layers too. But yeah, Illustrator is amazing just in the sense that the way to tweak things or even Flash. Sometimes I'll draw some of my just sort of goof around comics I've done in Flash because you don't have to literally draw. You can tweak those little points. You can and then it's like, oh, I got these layers. I get rid of this and then undo. It's just amazing with the different programs.
Yeah, it is. One of the things I was told at the beginning with Adobe programs is the biggest strength is also the biggest weakness, and that is there's more than one way to do things in Adobe programs. So, because I've seen it too. I've gone to different seminars, and the way one person does it and the way another person does it are completely different. And is anybody really doing it the quote unquote best way? Well, who knows, right?
Yeah. I went to I used to belong to the Milwaukee. Well, I still do. They just don't have meetings. Milwaukee Animation Club, and there was a guy doing a presentation on Flash, and the way he did lip sync was very strange. Where he had it as like one asset, and it had all the different frames, and basically it was very weird, and I don't even know if I could reproduce it. And I wanted to be like, why do you do it that way? But I didn't want to ask. You never want to ask an artist that because I'm just like, wow, that seems like more work. Like you could just do it way simpler. There is a few benefits, but I guess the way he did it, now that I think about it. But it's interesting how each artist kind of figures out their own way of doing things.
Yeah, I learned that especially too when I took a seminar with the editor. He's an editor at SNL. He just was going about he said, listen, we're not going to talk about which is better Windows or Mac. We're not going to talk about which is better Adobe or Advid. He's like, if whatever works for you, and just do the best work you can. We're just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
But having said that, we did learn on Adobe though. So it was that seminar, by the way, was absolutely excellent, and I have to get him on the show as we talk about different seminars and stuff like that. You actually launched a Kickstarter last year in November 2014. Could you take us through where the impetus to create this Kickstarter came from?
Sure. I'm trying to think of like the very beginning of it. That's a hard one. I think it was I'd been doing these workshops for 5-6 years, the animation workshops, and I had decided that just to make a product out of it. And I wish I could remember. I don't remember if it had a great story like the other one, even like the Madman Magic, I at least met somebody for coffee. I think it was just, I don't think anyone mentioned it. I think I was just looking for something to sell digitally, to do a digital product that I can sell through my website. And I had some friends who have been doing digital products, and I thought, what skills do I have? And I thought about doing like a balloon twisting tutorial. I thought about doing a few other things, and I said, well, why don't I just take my workshop and turn that into a digital course? And so, yeah, it just started with that, and then put the time into it, and it was successful. And I'm a bit behind on getting all the deliverables, but part of that is it's expanded as I've done it. Originally I thought, I could just videotape my workshop, and as I've been delivering stuff, I realized I want to go. Here's an opportunity to actually get in depth and to do some new animation. So each lesson has its own original animation, and so that all those things have been adding up time-wise more than I expected. And so we'll actually, the timeline we have now is to launch it to the general public, doing like probably a discount is Cyber Monday. So that's the 30th, I believe. We'll have a where other people can buy it other than, the Kickstarter people, and the Kickstarter people will have all their stuff, slightly before then. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a roundabout story, I guess, of how that got started.
Well, I was actually one of those Kickstarter people, and one of the most attractive things about your campaign was you started at $1. However, you got the basic home animation handbook for, the digital copy as a PDF for $1. I think that is an amazing way to open up a crowdfunding campaign, because to me, you want to get people in. Because everyone can spend $1. I'm pretty much sure we can all agree that $1 is not asking people too much. So if you started $1, I think that really opens up, and you can sort of parlay that, and people can say, all right, so what's the next level? $5 now, but yours was $8, and yours went from $1 all the way up to $2,300 for perks, at the different and the perk structures. So did you plan that accordingly, so that hey, I want to make sure everyone can get a piece of this? That's why you priced the handbook, the PDF, at $1.
I did, and it didn't work out quite as good as I would like. I mean, the campaign went well, but I was hoping to make it almost like a news story, where it'd be like, you literally, I mean, there's very little you can get for $1. So I'm happy with the campaign overall, but I was kind of thought, to me, the goal was to get more. It wasn't about making a lot of money. It was to try to get as many people in. Because again, I've taught animation to hundreds of mostly kids, but hundreds of people. And so the idea of, like basically saying there is no barrier to buy this. And it worked out okay. And we got, we got several hundred people who signed up. Again, I would hoped that more people, and again, not for the money, but for the fact that I am really passionate about animation, and the idea of all these people being able to make animated videos from home was exciting. So, again, very, very happy with the campaign, but was kind of surprised more people didn't jump on the $1 the $1 thing. Because I mean, even if you're kind of like, well, do I want to learn animation? I don't know. It's like, well, it's $1. Just pay the $1. And if I could have learned animation for $1 when I was tinkering around in my college dorm room, man, that would have saved me a lot of time. So, but yeah, that was the original thought was I really wanted to get people excited about animation. So.
And that's a good point, is even if they don't want to learn, they could say, wait a minute, do I want to learn? Maybe I don't, but hey, listen, it's $1, so what is it going to matter in the end? And there's a great article I once read, and I'll link to it again. It's called "Everything Is Sales," and I know some of the listeners of this podcast have heard me talk about it before, but to me, when you're launching a crowdfunding campaign, first off, it's a full-time job, as I'm sure you know, Jason. And, so you're always emailing, talking to people about it. And it's sort of, you're trying to sell them on this idea, and then you're trying to get them to engage and actually, make a conversion, which is them, them purchase, pledging a perk at a certain level. I think a lot of artists tend to go into crowdfunding campaigns not prepared for the business aspect, because I've seen it on other Kickstarters as well. Because if you listen to the podcast before, at least once a week I'm getting hit up for a crowdfunding campaign through my website or what have you, or on Twitter, and it's just like I look at their campaign and it's just so poorly planned out. That's why whenever I see, I mean, even like, I see someone like you, I saw your campaign. I'm like, wow, this guy gets it. $1. That's a great way to, introduce, to get someone, to look at this campaign. I have other people send me campaigns. They're starting at like $50, $100.
Yeah. And I know that Kickstarter says 25 is like the sweet spot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely, in retrospect, like financially, I think it did help because, it helped me. But again, I wish more people had jumped in on that. Just in the sense of, like you said, people see it at that. And I think I did a relatively, not to toot my own horn, a good job of getting that across with the video. And I think that's what got people excited about it in general was, the goal wasn't like, oh, let's, I'm using the money for this, I'm using the money for that. It was like, we were trying to get animation to everyone, have people have access to be able to create their own animated videos. And so, the few people who jumped on the higher tiers, I have a feeling that's what made them say, okay, I'm willing, I have the finances to do this, and so they jumped on it as that. But so it was I feel like it was a good idea in that way. And now that it's done, I can still continue selling it, so it will get out to more people as I do it. But you're right, a lot of people, they have to think about what people are taking a chance, and it's like, are they going to take a chance on you at $50? It's kind of a high amount to start with. So
Yes.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and the other thing I always think about is relationships. Like you just said, with the $50, if you're a complete stranger, it's very hard to get such stranger to give in $50. But if the more familiar they are with you, the better the chances are of them, upping that perk. I've seen it before too. Where someone has actually a solid network, and he was crowdfunded in a day.
Right.
And that's just all the people he knew. Then he finally, he did a soft launch, and then he finally got all the people that he knew. Then he got, after the people that he knew, he got the rest of, we released it publicly, we were tweeting it out, and that was all just, the icing on the cake. But your Kickstarter was a success. And I have the handbook. You did release that, and you were releasing the updated iterations of it. So I wanted to ask you, Jason, to anyone listening to this who was interested in getting into animation, what do you recommend they do?
It's a good question. I guess my gut reaction is to say, order the book. And if you want to sign up, I do have we can sign up to get an email when it goes live, and that's at learntoanimatecourse.com. And if you don't, and it'll be higher than $1 for this one, just because the Kickstarter prices will be a little bit different, and I feel like I owe it to the Kickstarter, the people who are willing to put the money up front to make it a little more, if I kept it at the same price, I think I'd feel bad a little bit for them. So I don't know specifically what the prices will be yet till I get closer, but if you want to join that's a good place to start. And it's not set up yet, but there should be, like, the first few chapters that just talk about the equipment that I give away for free, just for people to kind of have an idea of what the book's about, and to know what equipments are involved. If you didn't want to buy the book, I would say just experiment with again, I used Windows Movie Maker. It's not super hard. You can use almost any video editing software that allows you to turn the image duration below, I'd say point 0.3 is pretty good. 369. I'm trying to do the math. But even lower is better, and I can't think of those numbers off the top of my head, just because when I think of it as a frame rate is different than the decimal point of a second. So, if you can get to that, if you can get to 0.5, that's probably not good enough, but you can still play around with it and see. To me, it's all about experimentation and trying new things. And with apps now, one can get away with a lot more than they could before smartphones. So if that's a possibility, that's always a good option as well.
Yeah, as I told you before, I through email, I actually was taking a online course, very very short and simplistic, but it was a good complement to your PDF. And as we were going back and forth, one of the things that I've been learning about too is just creating just different characters, because obviously I'm not an illustrator. If I was, when I do it, I'm going to use actual 3D models, and like a set and everything like that. But you're absolutely right though. I won't use my smartphone. I'm probably going to use my DSLR.
Yeah.
But
Choice.
yeah. One of the things that I've noticed too is it not to be too ambitious the first time. It's kind of like making a live action movie. Well, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, if this is your first movie, you're not going to make, a Martin Scorsese film. You're not going to make Taxi Driver on your first effort, but, you need to think a much lower scale, just so you can get acclimated to the process.
For sure. And I usually tell people to start with the students. They have these like grand visions. And I say, well, think in seconds. Like if you can get 3 to 4 seconds, like that's pretty good in a, 2.5 hour workshop. I think too, it helps to, if one wants to think grand, think what's the first short thing I need to shoot, and that's kind of what I did with Hillary. Originally, I was going to shoot it in all cutout animation, and I did the cutouts for like the first scene, and it turned out cool because it was like paper cutouts. But then I instantly realized just from that 6 seconds how much work that was going to be, and then realized how much time Flash would save me. And so then I switched over to digital. But yeah, it's definitely, it also too, I mean, thinking small like that allows someone to experiment with more. So it's not thinking of it as a hindrance. It's better to think of it like, I can instead of having to spend 2-3 years on doing this hand-drawn thing, I can experiment with sand animation. I can experiment with stop motion. I can experiment with claymation. I can experiment with all these other things. And, it's easy to make something short in an afternoon. So, experimenting, playing around with it, and then deciding what that next step is better than try to take it all on at once.
Yeah, definitely. And I was even speaking to you about some of the other resources, out there. Granted, they're not free. Some of them are, it's a premium, but I just saw an article today about how the online film schools are actually going to cause the physical film schools to lower in price because there's so many resources out there now.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think premium has its it definitely has its perks because, as people who use the internet constantly, it's easy to think, I'll just look it up online. And especially like the more technical stuff, the problem with that is it's not always put together in a way that's helpful to learn. And again, that stuff's out there. And in film, there's actually quite a few that I think do a pretty good job for free. But in animation specifically, I think of I have rows and rows of animation books, and I'm just like, man, I'm glad I got these, because if I had to try to figure out how to find this information in this order through random websites, it would just take forever. And so, with the books, I can at least be like, all right, I have ones that talk about just timing. I have ones that just talk about storyboards. I have ones that just talk about, very specific things. And yeah, doing Google searches on that would probably take an hour just to find a good, reputable site that would be helpful. So, yeah, it depends on specifically what they want to learn, but I think premium is a good way to go when you're willing to cut down on Googling time. So,
yeah, very true. And it's always good to have a good network too. I just got an invite the other day. I know Shane Hilbert. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. He's the director of cinematography, and he's opening up his own online film school now, and that's a monthly subscription service. So again, I'm like, wow, there's just so many options out there now, and but paying a monthly subscription fee is a barrier to entry. So it kind of just keeps people out who are just signing up, and they just want to be a part of another Facebook group or what have you. So, I got the first month for free, so I'm going to check it out to see if it's something I want to keep going on with. But again, even that, you get to see that, it's a pretty good network, because that used to be the argument for physical schools was, well, hey, education is secondary because you're getting paid, or I'm sorry, you're paying to be a part of this network. So when you go out, you're an alumni, and you go out and then you can meet other alumni, and when you're here, you're working with each other, and you know who to trust. You can build that relationship. But again, now you're seeing that more online now too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too with paying, it's that money's going to create the stuff. So it's not like that. A good example is I actually have an MBA, and I am on a few businessy subscriptions where I'm taking classes through these websites, and I have to say I'm learning more. When you go to the college, and so a good example would being like a class, and then the teacher puts up a note saying, oh, today we're not having class, and all the kids are like, all the students, master's degree level students are like, yeah, I don't and I'm thinking, man, I just paid $100. Like if I did the math, I'm probably paying $100 to sit in this class, and we're excited to basically throw away that $100 where the monthly subscription is $30 a month, and like I get access to all these resources, and it tends to be better because there's a higher standard, in maybe business school is not the best example, but like I specifically interested in online business. And so most of the professors are behind, and, they have their specialties, but the online business schools that are online, like they have to be up to date because otherwise, people will drop out, where basically the universities just have to convince kids that they needed to, a piece of paper than, as opposed to actually having the best information. So I'm definitely pushing people to go more towards online schools and things like that. I think they get a higher degree of quality that way. Yeah.
And I also think now, Spike Lee, or I think it was Spike Lee said, they used to go to film school just to get the equipment. Well, now, everything is so democratic. The equipment is in the palm of your hand now. Yeah, because you could learn using your phone, and then you can actually, I always say the best mistakes are the ones you make for free, because you don't want to rent this huge camera package and then go, oh, well, this film really sucked. It didn't even look good because I didn't even know how to use the camera. You know what I mean? And then, and then you look back and you say, wow, we just wasted $5,000, or God forbid, even more. But now, you can actually start, teaching yourself, filmmaking just by, shooting stuff on your phone, editing it on your computer, and then, like Mark Duplass said in a blog post, teaching yourself every weekend, you and your friends go out and shoot a short film for $100, and that's it.
Yeah, the hard part's finding the friends.
Yeah,
to do that.
So what I used to do was, when I was in college, or even when I got out of college, I got out in 2010. I would just grab students that are actors, and going to the acting side of things, and they're always looking for stuff, and either that or I would just. Well, now I have so many different friends. If I were to post something, I would say, listen, I'm going to be upfront with everybody. Hey, listen, if I want to do this, and it's just going to be for, us, and we're not going to waste everyone's time, though. At the same time, it's going to be, something small, but we're not going to waste everyone's time. But hey, this is what it's going to be, and we're not sending this to film festivals. It's just, what I mean. It's going to be something that's more of a learning experience. I think if you're upfront to people, they more appreciate that than when some student filmmakers post things. It's usually like they act like they're making the next Casablanca, and they're like, well, you might want to scale that down. Right. Hyperbole is it could be your downfall.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
So, Jason, I want to ask, I know we didn't get this into your, as we were talking about your story, but, you performed on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Could you, talk about that, how that came to be?
Sure. At that time, I was just performing was my only thing. Like now I do a mix of stuff just to keep myself sane. I was performing full time at a theme park near Chicago, part of the Six Flags theme parks. And I just sent him, to be honest, a promo pack and just was saying, hey, I do these weird stunts. And I don't even remember what was in the pack. And a producer called and said, hey, we do this segment. We're looking for just unusual acts. What do you got? And I gave him a list, and it was things that he had all seen. And then I said, give me a week. I'll call you back with, some stuff I know you'll never have seen. And he's like, okay. So then I called him back, and he took the first thing I had. And they just flew me out and did the routine, and it was interesting. I was on with Rachel Ray, who I didn't know who she was at the time. It was kind of bizarre because I came back and I saw her face like on like Ritz crackers and stuff, and I'm like, oh, weird. I didn't really notice this person, and then I noticed she was everywhere. And then I was on with Russell Crowe as the other star guest, and I think there was a band, but I can't remember who they were. I'm not a big music guy, so but yeah, that was basically it. So I mean, that's one of those things where, and I've come close to getting on Leno. I don't even know if they switched yet. I don't really watch a lot of TV, so that's like my biggest downfall for that stuff. But I definitely, it was one of those things where I just took a chance and just figured, well, it can't hurt. I just had my basic promo pack that I was using already, so it didn't take much. I just added a little cover letter. They took it, so it worked out.
Well, you said you were almost on Leno. Did you mean Letterman?
Yeah, sorry. Almost on Letterman, yeah. And that one, I can't remember. The reason that the stunt I was trying to sell to them, they questioned. They had some things that they weren't sure about that I eventually fixed, and then I ended up doing it on America's Got Talent instead. And I kind of wish I had just done it on Letterman. I think I could have done it on Letterman. And I guess I could still. I'm not sure if they made that switch yet, because I know that all the hosts are switching. And I don't know when that is because I don't watch TV. But I'll have to see if they're still doing the. For that one, it would have been on Stupid Human Tricks. Mm. So that one, I'll have to see whoever's coming up next if they do that or what. But
the way late night TV works is, well, I'm sorry, the late night TV hierarchy, as it was explained to me, is now it's Fallon, then it's Kimmel, then it's Conan, and then it's I guess whoever, I'm not sure whoever is left, but. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not a big Jimmy Fallon fan. I'm more of a Kimmel and Conan fan. Yeah. I actually have a couple friends who work for Jimmy Kimmel, and that's why I want to support him as well, because he's also a talented guy. But yeah, I know that whole regime just completely shifted around.
Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming for someone who doesn't watch TV. Do you know if they do any kind of odd? I imagine they have to, because all of them are kind of goofy. They're not. They're not like they're all goofy guys. So I imagine they probably do some kind of segment like that, but I don't know. You would know better than me. Yeah. Do they have that?
I think they do, because I know a lot of what they're doing now is Kimmel focuses on two things. That's the celebrities reading mean tweets about themselves, and he also does a lot of man on the street stuff. Fallon does his own. He was doing that lip syncing thing and a couple of things. But that's a good question. I'm sure somebody listening to the podcast is probably like, "Come on, guys! Of course they do or whatever,"
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not 100% sure though.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Conan would be one I'd be excited to be on. Actually, all of them really, it'd be exciting to be on their shows more than like Leno. I never really. I think booking wise, if I would have played my cards the way I should have, it was a good because the producer I talked to said if we were on Letterman, there'd be no way they would bring us on Leno. Mm-hmm. And then, but I think Letterman would have been like, whatever. And so, yeah, I like, as someone who doesn't really watch, I liked Letterman more than Leno, but yeah, that's just kind of how it fell together, I guess. But yeah, any of those guys, I enjoy the stuff that I've seen from them, so I'll have to send some stuff out. I'm also performing a lot less, so I guess that's a good excuse to spend the time to send them some promo stuff.
Now, did you actually get to meet Jay before the show?
We did. It's a weird deal because like I think I've heard this from someone else. Some other performers who I think were on a different show, and I can't remember who the host was, but they do like so you go in and you do like a dry run or whatever they call it, something I can't remember what they call it. And
dress rehearsal? Yeah,
dress rehearsal. But Leno's not there. Like you do it without him. And so it's weird because he's like watching, but he's not like there. Or they tell us that he's watching. And then, we do that. And then we went back to the dressing room. And then he basically just showed up and said hi and talked to us a little bit before the show. And so he's there all day. I can imagine like, I can't remember what time we got there, probably like 8. And he was already there. And we still had, like several hours before showtime. So, he must have been putting in like 12-hour days or something crazy.
Yeah, eventually, like I think Letterman said, eventually you get used to it. Like Howard Stern is just so used to it now because he just got in that groove.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. And they were making stylistic changes because so the routine we did was I would lay on a bed of nails and then we put like another bed of nails on top of me. And then, the other guy would stand on top and then get on top of a unicycle on top of me and ride a unicycle back and forth on that top bed of nails. And then the gag originally was, and I think he came up with this, the guy who I did it with his name's Circus Boy, Bobby Hunt. And he would throw eggs at my face was like the gag. And the producer they were going back and forth on whether they thought that was too like jokey. So then they were going to have him juggle. And then I think Leno said after he saw I think we did both. They were kind of like goofed around during the dress rehearsal. And he said specifically, yeah, let's just do the eggs. And I think he regretted it a little bit because he ended up, Circus Boy, Bobby Hunt ended up playing it up a little bit. And I think Leno got some eggs on him. And so he quickly during the commercial took off, and I think he got touched up, and Bobby had put his hand like in Leno's hair, stuff like that. So I think it. I'm kind of curious if that pissed him off or if he was cool with it or what. But he did the rest of the show, and we didn't end up getting a chance. We got a photo with him, but I didn't ask. But it was fun. It was a fun time. So,
yeah, that is one in a lifetime opportunity, and I think that that's an amazing story, and it just goes to show you, Jason. It depends on your network, and also it depends upon your portfolio. That's those two things.
And taking a chance. I think that was a huge part. Is just I was kind of just like, I'm just going to do this, and what's the worst that could happen, and and it worked out.
Very cool. And Jason, we've been talking for about 50 minutes now. So in closing, is there anything that maybe we haven't talked about that maybe you wanted to discuss, or is there any sort of anything you wanted to say to sort of put a period at the end of this whole conversation?
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. I would just say, kind of going along with that theme of taking a chance. I think take a chance, but then also like stick with it. I'm one of those people who have multiple interests, but I feel like I still stick with I like animation. I like the things that I like doing. I stick with, and eventually have developed an ability to make a business out of it. And so, whether you're a professional, whatever you're doing, or and someone who wants to get into some kind of art field or non-art field, just making it like part of part of one's life, I think is really the secret to pulling that off. And so, granted, with an MBA, I could be working for some corporation making, widgets or car parts or something, but instead I'm making a modest income, making comic books, animated videos, and teaching people to do different creative stuff. So I think you don't have to pick, like, this is the thing I'm going to do. I guess that's one lesson as well. But making that part of one's life and taking chances is important.
Yeah, and you also get to come on podcasts and have me hurl questions at you.
Yeah, which is exciting. Yeah, it's been fun.
Jason, where can people find you out online?
Sure. The best place to find me right now is compulsivecreative.com. And if you're interested in the animation course, learntoanimatecourse.com. Those are the best places. Otherwise, Twitter, it's kind of probably the best place on Twitter is Jason Loves Life, at Jason Loves Life. And I guess that's everything else is through Compulsive Creative. So you could just search for that on different social medias.
Awesome. And I'll link to that, everyone, in the show notes, so you can contact Jason. Everyone, you can always find me at davebullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. Jason Love, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And I want to wish you the best of luck with everything. And I'll keep you informed of what I do with my stop motion animation. Yeah,
I'm excited to see it.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, Jason, take care, my friend.
Yep, you too.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.